Hello, all you budding theologians, and welcome back to another episode of Brains, Bibles, and Beyond.
Beyond.
Everybody's favorite podcast, some have said. So, on tonight's episode, we have our favorite segment, Stump the Theologian, where we're going to try to get Joel to not answer the question. And then on our next segment, we're going to have a little segment we call Cultural Controversies, where we just discuss some cultural things going on in the world today or in churches. And I think today's actually going to have to do with churches.
Oh.
And then we have, as you may see, a couple guests with us.
Yeah.
So we're going to be interviewing Andrew and Peter, or whatever other apostle name you'd like to call them. I'm sure we will be mixing it up throughout the day. So without any further ado, everybody grab your favorite theological receptacle and let's get started.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, on our first segment, Joel, I have a question for you.
I'm ready.
So, in my scouring of the entire internet,
wow,
one of the things I like to do in my spare time is look at skeptic websites.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so I found one that is, I ain't sure what it's called. It's basically an anti-Christian apologetics website. Didn't know there was such a thing, but it has a bunch of contradictions in the Bible.
Yeah. All right.
So we've addressed some contradictions before.
Sure.
This one is one of the more interesting types of stories. So, you may want your Bible.
I have
You got your Bible.
Yeah, digitally.
All right. Who incited David to count the fighting men of Israel? According to this website, in 2 Samuel 24:1, it says God did. And in 1 Chronicles 2, it should be 21:1. It says 2:1:1. That doesn't make sense. It says that Satan did.
What was the Second Chronicles reference again?
Good question. I think it's 21:1.
All right, maybe so. Let's see. No. What else? I'm familiar with this problem, though.
You're familiar with the story and the problem, yeah. I don't think the reference they put in here is correct.
But the one in Chronicles is important because it's a word that's used there, and that's what I was going to bring out, is the Hebrew word that's used.
Let me find it. I think it's 1 Chronicles, right?
Let me see.
What did I tell you?
You said 2 Chronicles.
I probably did. I think it's.
Yep, there it is. Yeah, 1 Chronicles 21:1. Okay. Yeah. So, what's interesting about that, when Satan stood up against Israel? Okay, so there is. So, like, Satan doesn't actually have a name in the Bible. Okay.
You just call him.
Well,
Satan.
we're saying that, right? Okay, but
okay,
it's really like a title. It's really, so it's like this. If I were just to call you, enemy, and I say, hey, enemy over there.
It's not kind.
Well, but it's not really a name, though, is it? Like,
yeah,
I'm using it as a name, but it's not really a name. Okay. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. Like I can say, God is the provider, but the provider is not his name.
True.
Okay. That's kind of the same idea.
Okay.
So you have like Satan and devil. Satan would be accuser. Devil is like adversary, enemy, that kind of a thing. Well, with this word, it actually is more of the adversary type, which would be normally devil. But it can have that idea of accusing, which is Satan. And so what they chose is to translate the word as Satan, that actual name. As we'd use it. That's actually how it sounded out. Satan. Okay, that's what it is.
Okay.
So is it actually that cherub that has fallen that we usually call Satan or the devil? Okay. Because like Lucifer's not even his name either. So I would say Lucifer, that's not his name. It's Isaiah 14.
Well, who's Lucifer then?
So first off, that's a Latin translation. So the Hebrew is halal, right? So it's like Lucifer's like light bearer, light bringer. And so Lucifer's the Latin translation. and they decided to keep that in the older translations, and then everybody just copied. But I think it's actually even referring to the final Antichrist. Now Satan empowers him, but it's the Antichrist. He's the light bearer, the light bringer. He looks like he's the answer. He is the faux Messiah, right? The false one. So he looks like everything's good and wonderful, but turns out not so much. Okay. So anyways, the point is this is who is this? I don't necessarily think it has to be Satan here himself. That if it was or isn't, that's actually not the main issue. Okay. So the main issue is, in 2 Samuel 24, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. He incited David. He did. Okay. So you say, well, Yahweh, the Lord, he incited. And then you hop over to 1 Chronicles 21, says then Satan stood against Israel and incited David to number Israel. Okay. So I think it's a simple issue of God is overall and he used somebody. So who gets credit? The president gives an order, soldiers carry it out. Okay, so who did it? A lot of times we might give the president credit, or we might give the soldiers credit. So I don't think there's actually a contradiction here. So then the question would become, wait a minute. So the Lord actually incited David to do wrong. Well, I think that's a little bit of a misnomer itself as well, because it's not like he is tempting him to do evil. Okay,
no, Satan did.
I still okay. So what I think is the issue is that God all the time will bring trials into our lives. Okay, now
and sometimes punishments.
Well, of course. So when a trial comes, oftentimes God is testing somebody, Satan is tempting someone. It's the same thing in the Garden of Eden. So God allowed this to happen. He makes this tree, he makes this serpent, he makes this Satan, okay? And he allows for this trial to take place. He's testing them to prove their love for him, that there's a real relationship here. At the same time, Satan is tempting them. So with testing, you set them up for success. You want them to succeed. You expect them to succeed. With tempting, you set them up for failure. You want them to fail. You expect them to fail. And so there's two different things going on at the same time without contradiction. Mm-hmm. So the Lord is testing with a trial. Satan, perhaps, or some other demonic being, or even a real person that's an enemy, right? That actually tempted. Hey, I don't know. I don't want to make up anything, but it's a challenge to get him to number them. That could very easily happen. And so no, I don't think there's a contradiction. I don't think there has to be. I still have questions myself of exactly how that all came out to be, but it very easily can be worked out without a contradiction.
Okay. You guys could be the judge today. Did we stump the theologian, or did he give a satisfactory answer?
I think he gave a satisfactory answer.
Oh, wow.
You guys are too easy.
Peter, what do you think?
Yeah.
That's his hesitation, though.
Yeah, we'll give it to him. No, I mean, yeah. That story itself just kind of makes my brain hurt sometimes. But yeah, I don't think it's a contradiction at all. But for all the things that you said, but
yeah, I think we actually see that pattern throughout Scripture a lot.
Because doesn't God allow Satan to do things?
Yes. Well, everything that happens has either been caused or allowed by God.
Right.
One of the two.
So even when Satan is tempting, God is allowing that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think Job would be a prime example of God allowing Satan to do stuff.
We got a bunch of theologians today.
That's right.
Hey, everybody's a theologian.
And they are.
I stand on that fact.
Everybody's a theologian.
Yeah.
Some are better than others, but everyone's a theologian.
Yeah. Some are a little farther down the process, but everyone's a theologian. Yeah.
Everybody has a theology of some kind.
That's right.
So yes.
Shall we go on to the cultural controversy?
Yeah. So cultural controversies for today.
All right.
So all right.
I'm excited to hear about it.
So this has been a recent conversation that I've had. Comes up from time to time. I'm sure you guys have heard these things as well. And so a lot of times when people are maybe looking for a church or something, a lot of times it will say, I need a church that really that I can get something out of. I'm gonna go to church and get something out of it. And then usually the person who's trying to talk them to get into going to their church will usually respond with saying something like, well, you shouldn't be looking what you can get out of church, but what you can give in church. That happens quite often, right?
Sure, yeah.
As if it has to be one or the other.
Yeah.
That was the conversation that we brought. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard these conversations, but obviously we should be giving to each other. I mean, as the body of Christ, we should be giving at church. We should be investing into the other believers at church. We should be involved in some type of ministry at our churches, whatever that is. But we can't just only give. You also have to be fed, right? Which, if we're all giving to each other, that should happen that way. But people act like they have to be one or the other. Like, I can go to church where I get fed. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay to look for a church where you get fed.
Yeah. Sure.
But people make it sound like, well, I can be more spiritual by going to church I don't get fed and just give.
Okay.
So anyway, what do you guys think about that? I mean,
I'll give a hot take real quick.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is motivation. What's your primary motivation? Is your primary motivation to just receive? Is your primary motivation to just give? And I think that you're right. We often hear just those one-sided things, and it really is both. Because if I'm not being fed, and not just every week, but sometimes, okay, it doesn't really happen. But if we're looking at like months are going by and I'm not being fed, that's not a healthy church. That's not good.
No.
And it's also not a healthy church if you have members showing up and they're not contributing in any way.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. And so that's kind of like the balance there. But I think I think there's something to be said about the question somebody asks, because it kind of shows what their lean is. So sometimes when someone talks about, what can I get out of it? Sometimes though, they're assuming, because they know, like, I know I'm going to give, so I'm just concerned about what I'm getting. And then, it could be the opposite could be true too. So that's those are my hot takes.
What do you guys think?
I think it's pretty accurate. You can give and receive.
Yeah, and you should give and receive at church, right? Yeah. And just so often I hear it said like as one or the other, and I'm like, I mean, I think you can have both. I mean, I appreciate the giving part, right? Like we should, but it is okay. It's almost said sometimes like it's kind of you're. It's almost like they put guilt on you if like, I want to actually receive at church as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's not true.
It should be a sense of community to an extent. Give and take.
And we should all be contributing and then therefore all be receiving. So
that'd be a very
you got a hot take, Andrew?
No, I don't have a hot
That's
take
weird.
on it. You got very complicated with it. So
he does have a tendency to just take the fun out of things.
I figured you just make it.
You need to have a solid shepherd at a church, right? I mean, it wears you down if you don't have someone feeding you spiritually in the church, and it's always just taken from you.
And not just the pastors, really there needs to be feeding by the general membership. Maybe not every single person, right? But there should be a general feeding.
So maybe this brings up another a follow question to this. How are the pastors fed? And then some of the leaders, because a lot of churches, there's certain people. Yeah. Well, in most churches, there's usually a group of people that do most of the stuff, which shouldn't be that way, but it always is. But then obviously you always have a pastor who's every Sunday they're the ones giving. How do they receive? How can they also be encouraged and blessed from the church? Because they should be also getting some blessing from the church itself. So how does that?
Let's hear from one of you guys first this time.
Yeah,
I'll wait.
Yeah, what do you guys do to bless the pastor?
Well, okay, a little background first, because we haven't really introduced these guys much yet. So Andrew and Peter both go to the Church of Monticello, Monticello Baptist Church, where I'm an interim pastor. So they might be very guarded with their answers right now. They're going to be very careful, but speak freely. Speak freely.
He's been a huge blessing in the church there for us. I felt like very drained and wore out before he arrived, and it's been, the way that he builds up and feeds us spiritually. That's
But the
something
question is,
What are you
don't encourage
doing?
me.
Yeah. What are we doing for him? was the
how's this
question.
guy getting fed?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
I don't know that we're doing much to help him in that way, and maybe that's something we should consider.
Does the pastor have a responsibility to cause himself to be fed? What do you think about that?
I think so.
I think
So it's all my fault.
I-
Okay.
I think
I
it's,
know,
I
we looked
think
at you. You've been eating.
yeah. We don't know about spiritually, but physically.
But yeah, I mean, I
Fed's an issue
I,
here.
I think it's a little bit of both, but yeah, I mean, patience will usually gets the job done. Where,
But if you
So-
have that correct structure in the church with the deacon and all of the leaders, like the elders, if you have that structure correctly, then I would say that they should give the pastor time off or allow him to be fed spiritually too.
So that goes into another thing, time off, like a recharge.
Yeah.
Okay.
To make sure that they're freshened up and, sharpen the axe to cut down more trees kind of thing. Well,
Let me ask the question of you then. Now, you've only been the interim pastor for a few months, so this isn't like you've been doing this for 30 years, right?
Right.
But you've been going to church for a while,
Yeah.
right? So, and you know lots of pastors.
Right.
What are some good practical ways that members of the church can be a blessing to the pastors or whoever in leadership is investing into them? What can we do to say, hey, you know what? How can I be a blessing to you? I mean, is it just being a friend, giving you somebody you can talk to? Is it, like, I don't know.
I'll tell you what.
What's some
I'd
good
say what I
ways?
would really look for is I would really look for people to come up to me and just say, "Hey, what can I pray for you about?" And then whatever I say, then just pray for me, like right there together with me. That'd be just pray with me. Even if I don't have anything to say, just pray with me. And then another one would be to share what you've been reading in the Word lately and how it's encouraged or challenged you. And then whether you do that or not, ask me, what have you been reading? Because it's possible, pastors can get, lazy is one thing, or just distracted, busy with other things. And so it'd be really good to have that challenge because, and I've said this from the pulpit and stuff too, there's nothing like somebody asking, hey, what have you been reading lately? If you do that consistently, boy, you're going to have something to say. You may have missed it the first couple times, but you're going to have something to say that third time. And so it helps keep me sharp. That sort of thing keeps all of us sharp.
Yeah.
And so that's really nice. I really appreciate that. And there's just once in a while there's somebody that comes up to me and just says, I just want to let you know again, that just because sometimes it's repeat type things. Just you've been an encouragement. I really appreciate your teaching, your preaching, that kind of stuff. And with that one, what really helps me is saying something specific about the teaching, not just in general.
Like actually listen.
Yeah, like I was struggling to get a nap until you started teaching. That could be the same thing. So to actually say something like I've never really thought of it this way before, or that was a great reminder. It doesn't have to be some brand new thought.
Sure.
Something like that is good. And it's such a, like, for me, I can run miles off that. Figuratively, of course.
I used to be a long distance runner.
I used to be able to run. That was a few years back. Yeah.
So you want to be prayed for?
Prayed with.
Oh, prayed with, right? on the
Yeah.
spot,
Prayed for, yes, of course.
and
But
then challenged on what you're reading in the Word.
and of course, these are things that are good for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times a pastor elder will get skipped over because it seems like they've got it all together. Like they, I don't need to help them; they're helping me.
There could be a tendency that you're like, oh, set apart above, but you're still just one of the Christians too, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm just a struggling sheep.
You're
Saved by
you're
grace.
part of the body also, and
Yeah.
and we can't forget that just because you're in the role of a pastor doesn't mean that you don't also need to be encouraged. So
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I mean, like, personally, at our church in Monticello, I have a leadership development team that I have, and we try to meet every Saturday. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but we try to meet every Saturday. And it's a few guys, and just take them aside, and I once in a while I'll poke and prod about praying or reading scripture, or taking it in, and all that. Andrew's a part of that, so I'll kind of try to get some challenges out there and trying to just show them how to do that themselves, and I'm happy with what we've been doing. I think we've been growing. So
Awesome.
that's a way a pastor can help himself, is just grab some dudes,
Yeah.
and just say, hey, we're doing this,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And of course, I think it is my responsibility to make sure I am fed one way or another.
True.
And that's just, some maturity, some responsibility. But I'm going to make sure that I am intaking scripture, that I am praying, that I have people in my life. I have this accountability type group I meet with as well regularly on Wednesdays. They're part of my church home in Ankeny. And so they really help me out as well.
Awesome. So,
Yeah.
all right. So that's I don't know how controversial it is, but it kind of can be. I just see two sides.
We just need someone to argue with us. That's all.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So anyway, moving on to our main segment. So, you guys may have noticed. I think we made reference already. We have Andrew and Peter here.
Yeah.
So these two guys are former Amish,
Mm-hmm.
ex-Amish. What do you prefer to go by?
Ex-Amish.
Ex-Amish.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just English now.
Yeah, you're English. We're a couple Englishmen here.
Fighting words.
He told me that's I told him I'm not ex-Amish, I'm English. He's like, that right there told me you were in fact ex-Amish.
yeah, that's right. Because no one else says that.
Yeah.
I was like, I actually am English. Last name Willoughby. Like, I can't get much more English than that, But a lot of us American citizens are not quite English, That's not fair.
Big fight over that years ago, huh?
Yeah. Okay, so right, it's just really awesome. Monticello Baptist Church is not a big church, but here we have two fellas that have both come out of the Amish communities, and so that's kind of fascinating, really interesting. And I was not really a stranger necessarily to the community, but there's a lot more I could learn, and I think there's a lot of people that can learn a lot about it. It's a lot you don't know, and I mean it's a huge population in America.
Oh yeah,
huge population, and I think very unreached, really.
Yeah.
And so we want to talk about it a little bit and to learn a little bit more about a little bit on the lifestyle, but I want to really focus on theology, the belief systems that are there. But a lot of that is tied to lifestyle. So I think a good way to start, if you guys will, and you can just take turns or however you want to do it. But I think there's a lot of confusion with what Amish. Is it lifestyle or is it a belief system? And then how is it, like, are they all the same? Okay, across the states and whatnot. And then how does that fit in with like Mennonites? A lot of people, they hear Amish, they hear Mennonite, they sometimes think they're the same.
Many questions.
Yeah. So
one question.
Okay. All right, so let's start with this. Amish, is it lifestyle or belief system?
A little bit of both, I think.
I would say it's both. It's like a religious culture that they've cultivated. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe more so one or the other, or is it very tied together?
I think it's I don't want to call it a cult, but I would lean very heavy on that, and it's because the original intent was to be more Christian, but it has gotten so far now that if I bring an English Bible to them and I start arguing with them, I'm misled and all of those things because their rule books is almost more strict to them than the Bible. So I have family members that were Baptists in the church and then they left, and the pastors pretty much told them that it doesn't really matter if you understand or misunderstand the Bible, as long as you listen to us, we'll pay for your sins. It's pretty much how they described it. And I think that's too much of a man-made religion instead of
right.
the Bible itself.
I would say they're tied together very much. So as in, because they believe that they do this or that, that's going to determine if they're going to go to heaven or hell, right?
True.
And so they're living their lives a certain way in hopes of getting to heaven. I would say they go kind of hand. They're very very knit together.
So
yeah.
on that topic, one of the for my parents, one of the strongest arguments they always make is that the Bible says to obey your parents. And it obviously does. But they hold that, like that's what they hold against you most, is that's why you're going to hell if you leave.
Of course, I just handled that this last Sunday morning.
Yeah.
With Did you like that?
I was very interested in that. Was very good. When I opened it last week and you said you were going to read it, I'm like, I can't wait to see how this goes.
Very good. Did I do all right? Do you think I did all right?
I think
okay.
you did.
There
You
you
did a phenomenal.
So,
job.
were you guys in the same community, Amish community, or different?
Different.
Ones? Okay. So, what kind of differences?
We were
every community.
one
kind of has their
grew
own.
carrots.
Yeah,
the other
we
one grew
were
watermelon.
somewhat. I think we were somewhat similar. You might have been just a touch more modern in some ways, and probably more strict in others.
Were you Swartzy Amish?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there's a name to all of them, kind of like
Okay.
how there's Mennonite, right? So there's Swartzy's, Old Order,
New Order.
New Order. There's 100 different
If you want,
things,
So, yeah.
kinds of Amish, right?
Yeah.
So, what's the main differences then between New Order, Old Order, and
so
Swartzy?
it would be like Baptists and Christians, kind of like I'm trying to Methodist and Baptist maybe,
Okay.
because you both have a similar belief, but like certain churches can't go to church. Like they can go to the church, but they can't marry with each other. They can't.
So you say denominations of the
Yeah,
Amish.
denominations would be the best way
Okay.
to describe it.
Like some will allow more technology than others. Some, the Old Order, a lot of them, they have tractors. They have electric bikes that go 45, 50 miles an hour out there in Ohio.
Nice.
But where we come from, we didn't even have triangles on the back of the buggy. That was considered too modern.
Sign of the
yeah.
devil.
Yeah.
That's the triangle.
Why I agree.
The community where we grew up, there was actually a couple Amish guys that ended up in jail making that stand on those triangles, to where the state wouldn't force them to put them on their buggies.
Talk to that a little bit. What was the big problem with the triangles?
It's just modernization, I believe. Even now, they still have issues going on up there in Minnesota about it. They're trying to get them to put lights on the buggy, and I feel I'm just saying what I'm thinking here. What I'm feeling about it is they felt like if it's gonna be triangles, then the next thing is gonna be electric lights, and that's the way the Old Order or the New Order they allow the electric lights on the buggy, and so that's just down a slippery slope, is how I see it.
And to their defense a little bit here, I'm sensitive to freedoms
Yeah.
and things, and just because it doesn't affect me, because one day it could,
No.
yeah, go ahead.
In a sense, that was the one thing I like. I don't necessarily agree with some of the approach, but if they had a problem and the government wanted to crack down with them, they said, "You're taking us all to jail." It wasn't, we're not budging. And in a sense, I like that because as a community, you can stand a lot stronger as an individual.
Yeah.
And out here, I see it all the time. Somebody may do something to stand as a Christian thing, and then they get banned or kicked out or whatever, and there's nobody else to stand up for it. And that's the one thing they have that the rest of the world doesn't, is they stick together on the issues. They might not. Sometimes they don't agree, or sometimes it makes no sense.
So how does the Mennonites fit in? So that just be another denomination of Amish, or that is completely different than Amish?
It's completely
Totally different. And
you could say at some point it was the same.
Well, there is some similarities, but
well, they all are rich.
So
and they-
do you know where the Mennonites came from? Or
please tell us.
So
Please tell us.
so the Amish were the Mennonites, and it was over in Switzerland when they were being persecuted for Anabaptists, is what they were considered over there. And one of the groups, I think it was the Amish, were over in Switzerland, and I might have my geographics wrong here, but one of the groups was in a heavier persecuted area than the other, and the Mennonites were in the heavier persecuted area. And they were supposed to meet up somewhere in the middle every so often to have a meeting. And the Mennonite leader didn't show up once or twice. I think his name was Menno Simmons. And then the Amish guy got mad and said, "We're shunning y'all because you refuse to take your faith serious." So they shunned all the Mennonites. Well, then the Mennonites basically did the same thing. And years later, I think the Amish quit, but I think the Mennonites, a high percentage, still shunned the Amish to this day.
And let's talk about shunning real quick,
Sure.
because I think there's a lot of people that don't understand what shun means. Like, because it's pretty extensive within the Amish communities. This is not just simply a hey, I don't like what you're doing. You know, it's a lot more intensive than that. So you talk to that a little bit. What is shunning?
Shunning is where you have to be with the church, right? So there's a certain age you reach before you join the church, like anywhere from 17 up to 21 is when you're expected to join the church, you know, and normally you do it around maybe the middle part, like 18, 19. That's about when you would join the church and get married. Usually you're planning on getting married if you join the church. Like, it's not that you have some spiritual convictions. It's just that the time in your life is right. I need to join church now so I can get married and have a family, that kind of thing.
Can I interrupt for just a second? So he said 21. The reason 21 is that usually the age is most parents will not allow their children to keep their money, because 21 is when you're on your own. And most parents will not allow you to keep your money if you're not baptized by the time you're 21. So it pretty much forces you, or you're not going to get, you're going to keep working for dad until you get baptized, pretty much.
Well, yes, and so when you're baptized and you've joined the church, now you're under the church's order, right? And if you break any of the church's rules, which these rules are all secret, and you get taught these rules as you join the church, it's like a 6 months process to join the church, or maybe not 6 months, maybe it's close to it. Okay, to join the church, and it's all done like in secrecy, away from the other people or whatever. Like me, I know nothing about Amish church rules other than what our parents would have taught us. And you weren't allowed to ask questions about this or that. They would tell us, the elders always did it that way. We don't question it. Questioning things would have almost been looked at as a sin as far as that goes.
Like rebellion. You know, questions are rebellion.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, you just go along. You don't ask questions. You know.
So church thing, my brother could probably tell you a lot more. He was actually a member for like 5 or 6 years. So.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
But then the shunning, when you do get shunned by the church, you have to repent or whatever. You have to repent with the church, I think. And then there's a long process. But during the time that you are shunned, you can't eat with anyone that is with the church. You couldn't, let's say, you can't eat at the same table your parents are eating at, or even your brother or sister, if they're with the church and you're shunned or whatever. You couldn't give your... So a thing that is common that happens when someone joins the church, they might later leave the Amish, you know, that person's shunned, and they can't bring gifts back to their parents. Even their parents can't accept gifts from them, and so it would affect you in that way, and it's kind of heartbreaking in some situations.
Well, my grandparents and 2 of my aunts were in a different church, and then my grandparents left that church and they came back to the church that we were at. As a child, I didn't realize it, but I thought, oh, my grandparents are cool. They're eating with us kids at the kids' table. Well, later I found out that their 2 children that were from that other church, they could never eat dinner together their whole life.
Oh, wow.
That's how shunning works. And then, like, if I'm running a business and me and you're partnered up and they shunt me and you have to, we can finish all started transactions up to the date of being shunned. But after that date, until I go back and make things right with the church, me and him have to stop doing transactions together.
Okay. So they take it serious.
Yeah.
Oh, very serious.
very
Yeah.
Okay.
Very serious.
Here, I'll give some stats for some people out there. It's really interesting.
Okay.
As of the latest comprehensive estimate, June 2025, about 404,575 Amish adults and children live in the United States.
Wow.
They're spread across 32 states,
Mm-hmm.
662 settlements. That's geographically distinct Amish communities, and 3,056 church districts. That's local congregations generally containing 20 to 40 households, is what it says. The largest Amish populations are number one. What's the state that's number one?
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, of course, right? 95,410.
Wow.
Number two, what state's that?
Ohio.
Ohio, yeah. And that's where I know that's most of my Amish experience is Ohio.
Mhm.
86,325. And then number three, though, I didn't know this.
Indiana.
Yeah, okay, Indiana,
Yeah.
yeah.
was
67,310. So together though, these three states contain roughly 61% of North America's Amish
Wow.
population.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty nuts.
Uh-huh.
For all of North America, including Canada, the 2025 estimate was 410,955. The population has more than doubled since 2000, largely because Amish families average 5 or more children, and approximately 85% or more of Amish-raised young people eventually join the church, as you were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
One qualification it gives here, this is ChatGPT. These estimates include horse and buggy Amish groups, but exclude car driving groups, such as the Beachy Amish and the Amish Mennonites.
Yeah.
Therefore, the number of Americans with some form of Amish identity or heritage would be higher.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy because that's a considerable number still.
Yeah.
That are driving cars and stuff. You know?
There's probably a pretty high percentage. Like, there's a pretty big number of exiles out here too, so that they probably don't count them.
We were talking about the Mennonites earlier. Iowa has. So Mennonites are often known that they would be driving cars, like they'll take the radio out of their car, or they'll take the antennas off so that the radio doesn't work, but they can listen to like audios where they might learn stuff from it. My brother, he's a Black Bomber Mennonite. That's how they're known. So they will spray paint their rims and their bombers black. And they can't have shiny chrome on their vehicles,
Oh,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's distinct. But then there's a group of horse and buggy Mennonites, and I had never heard of that before until I saw them here in Iowa,
Where's that at?
up northwest of New Hampton, Iowa, a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah,
I didn't
there's a
realize
pretty
that.
big community out there. They'll have tractors and wagons that it looks like kind of their primary transportation, but then they have horse and buggy for Sundays, and I see vehicles mixed in with it too.
I'll see.
That's interesting.
I've come across places where obviously Amish folks, some houses together and stuff,
No.
and then there's like these like giant SUVs
Yeah.
in the front,
Mhm.
and so because you can get away with, well, within some communities, it's not the same everywhere, but you can get away with having people drive you places, which is kind of interesting.
So we could certain places we could have a driver. We couldn't go to work with a driver, but we could go to the store, the hospital. And when we lived in Kentucky, it had to be a scheduled route. So somebody just be like, "Hey, I'm taking a van and I'm going to town every week." Then the Amish could pile in.
And then there's another thing where the New Order Amish, or even some Old Order Amish, will allow their children as they hit that age of Rumspringa.
Yeah.
They can have vehicles, and so the parents will hitch a ride with their children all the time. So they can't have vehicles, but their child is in Rumspringa, so they always have a vehicle. They have a right to go places.
If
That's
you get 10, 15 kids,
Yeah.
you can have a ride for several years.
that's a big thing out in Indiana that you see.
Yeah.
Now,
Nice. That's a loophole there.
That's a
Yeah.
big.
I know there's a
thing.
number of people that are familiar with that,
Uh-huh.
but I know there's also a number of people that are not. So can you explain that real quick, the Rumspringa?
So you want to go ahead?
Well, I mean, we didn't have Rumspringa, so I'm
they
barely
were the
familiar.
real deal,
Oh,
the
yeah,
old
yeah.
school.
I
didn't
wasn't
figure
either.
you
I
did
just
a lot. So Rumspringa, I would say, is a lot of the Amish that ex-Amish that I've talked to that had Rumspringa. It wasn't necessarily that their parents would be like, "Okay, you're 16, you can go do whatever." So in the Amish church, if your child is misbehaving, the church holds the parents accountable for it. And in most of the Rumspringa, they basically gave them from the age of 16 to a certain age, where they wouldn't really come down hard on the parents if their children misbehave. And some might be different, but a lot of the ones I talked to, that's kind of what it was. So it wasn't like you turn 16, you just go do whatever you want. It was just when you turn 16s, your parents don't get punished if you misbehave. So like you described, it's very likely that a lot of Amish, I mean, I knew Amish that always had the driver's phone, and the driver would always forget his phone at the guy's place. So, like those type of loopholes. But
Yeah, well, I think like because you always have the group of those kids that will go out and just go wild. They really do, and it's just horrible stuff because they know they have this like limited amount of time, and so they just try everything. I think it's rough.
I don't think that's just Rumspringa though, because for us, and I bet he can witness the same, is when we left, I left at 16, and it was like somebody opened the cage doors and no rules existed anymore. I mean, we were doing anything from partying and running from the cops to everything else you can think of. Go spin up an Amish guy's yard just to get back at him.
So that's a very popular thing, that kids that left the Amish, they would have a grudge with some Amish guys from back in the day, and then they would go cruise Amish country. That used to happen all the time, and they would spin through their yards, their gardens. They would throw stuff at their windows.
I remember roll the windows down and crank the radio up too.
Sounds rude.
Yeah,
let's not confess too much.
I never did that.
They're not going to see it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, there's secretly.
there's probably 10 Amish guys somewhere watching. Well, not me. I don't know.
On the driver's phone.
The driver's
They just can't complain about it because they'll reveal themselves.
Yeah, Kit's Rumspringa phone.
Just stewing.
Speaking of this phone, one time we were at an Amish store, and they had cell phones there.
Yeah.
That they could use for the store, but they couldn't plug them in. So when you came in, they were like, "Hey, can you plug this in for me?" So they wouldn't die. But then they could use the cell phone. So it's just, I know there's so many different rules depending on the community and stuff, but so for me, Kieran, and Joel probably already knows this, but how old were you? You said you were 16 when you left?
Yeah.
And then how old were you?
I was 16.
Okay.
Dude. Yeah.
So what brought that about? Like when did you decide, or why did you decide that, like, hey, I'm done with this, I'm moving on?
I think mine was 3 reasons. I mean, I was a very depressed child. I wasn't the middle child, but I was somewhere in the middle.
How many siblings?
You're one of the forgotten ones.
15 siblings, and I was the 5th one, so I was towards. But it was just, you don't ever measure up. That's kind of the like. There's you can't really understand the goal because it makes no sense. And if you read the Bible, you almost get more confused because what you're reading and what you're being told just don't really connect. Like there's certain like. You'll find certain things in the Old Testament, like, oh, this makes sense. And then you go in the New Testament and you start wondering, like, well, now how does this make sense? But so that would have been part of the reasons is you're taught if you leave, you're going to go to hell. And I've got to the point where I think I'm going to go to hell here anyway. So why not go enjoy life? But
sure, yeah.
The second reason the second reason for me probably was I'm at 16, I think my dad had a little stricter rule, 16 3/4 instead of 16 and a half years old. We could join the young folks, and I wanted to be a rowdy one with a radio and beer and stuff. So I'm just going to leave for a while, make some money, and then I got money when I come back. And I never went back. Yeah, but that was ultimately, those 2 were kind of the reasons. Like I thought if I'd leave and make some money, and then I'd come back, I'd have this money, and I would have 5 stashes secretly hidden because Dad's going to take my money every time he can.
Yeah.
But
we just never went back then.
Never went back, no.
So how about you?
Well, people always say, oh, I left the Amish because of technology reasons and this and that. But I believe it's because there's no love in the home. Like, the Amish do not believe in teaching the children love because they believe their children will become proud and haughty-minded if they love their children too much or whatever. And so my thought is, well, if you're not teaching love, what are you teaching? Because it's going to be the opposite, isn't it? But I felt like I left, or I know that I left because there was no happiness there. I felt very, like he said, depressed. I was, searching for something different, something better. Like I didn't feel like there was any fulfillment there. And, obviously when I left, I was just left in a rebellious mindset, and that caused a lot of heartache and pain down the road,
Sure.
because of it. But
I have a question for you guys. How many, if you had to take a rough guess and just throw it, just based off your own personal experience and people you've talked to, what percentage of the Amish community would you say is born again?
like,
That's I don't. I mean,
Rough
a
guess on your
small
own personal-
percentage.
okay.
Small percentage.
maybe 10%, I
Yeah,
would say.
that's 5 to 10.
We won't hold you to it. We'll just,
No, the only reason I say this is my brother-in-law is a prime example, and he went to a more modern Amish church, and I'm like, you're kind of, but he said that the main reason he left the first church was because he never woke up in the morning saying, "Man, I wouldn't do this if but God doesn't want me to, so I'm not going to do it." He said instead he always woke up and said, "Man, I would do this, but the elder don't want me to. I'm going to get in trouble if I do it." And he said suddenly he realized he doesn't fear God; he fears the elders, and that's what he lived his whole life revolved around. So
Okay.
So, what, how did you, we'll go one at a time here. Maybe I'll start with you, Andrew, this time. So, tell me about how you first came to know Christ and as being born again, saved.
The way that I came to that was, I was working a lot. Like I was working in the oil fields and working around the clock. I was doing that for maybe a year by then, and I just became more and more miserable. Like it was so dark. And
How old were you at this time?
I was 20.
Okay.
20, and I was just turning 21. And I came to a place that was so dark that I was forced to get on my knees and pray, because I used to convince myself that God isn't real or that he doesn't love me, and I used to fight those thoughts, and it was a very, very demonic way to be. And I tried to fight that for many years in that way, saying that God's not real, because I was made to believe that if I leave the Amish, I'm for sure going to hell because of the fact that I'm not Amish. So my thought was, I'll just deny that it exists, because that's easier than trying to say I'm going to hell, right? So,
Sure.
but yeah, I was brought to a place that was so dark and so low that I was forced to fall on my knees and ask him for mercy. Ask the Lord for mercy in that.
So, and how did you come to know the gospel?
That was just learning, my own
Like
learning.
your own reading of scripture?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Because at that point, that was like a turning point in my life. But it's ingrained in us growing up. Like God is real, very much exists. We were taught about Jesus, might not have been taught the proper way, but it was still there. We knew about it, and that's probably what caused me to get to that place to give my life to Christ.
All right. Yeah. Peter?
I mean, somewhat similar path, I would say. It was slightly different, but I would say probably the main reason that I really got into reading the gospel was arguing with my dad. And it was his claim that I'm going to hell. Well, it started pretty much like he said. First, you just think you're going to hell. And then second, you're like, all right, maybe they're just made up. And then pretty soon you're like, well, if some crazy religion is out there telling you everything wrong, then there's probably just no God and they're just all lying. And that's the story you go. Well, then if you care about it, you start trying to prove it wrong. And the harder you try to prove it wrong, the more you will be convinced that it's not, that there in fact is a God. But ultimately, the gospel, I got in arguments with my dad, and I told him, I said, I will read the Bible cover to cover, and if I find anywhere in there that it says I have to be Amish to go to heaven, you'll see me back here. And never found it. So, but as for how I gave my life to Jesus, this was earlier on, kind of towards my atheist stage, and to an extent, and I worked with a guy. He was actually Catholic, but he would always encourage me. It wasn't much, but every day he kind of encouraged me. He's like, just pray. I'm like, whatever. He would just leave it at that, and then the next couple days later, he would encourage me again. And one week I was going home to visit. I don't hardly ever went home to visit. I said, you know what? I'm going to actually pray a meaningful prayer, and I'm just going to ask for a few things. And it was so evident to me that the things I asked for, that they were revealed. And I'm like, there's no way my dad would have done that without outside help. And it pretty much just then and there, I was convinced that, because I asked for calling. Just ask my dad to treat me like I'm his son. Don't, argue with me. And then the final question is like, I just want to pray with my dad. And then we did. And it was pretty much, I was like, there's no way that all three of those would have happened without outside help. And pretty much that right there convinced me that.
So then in reading the Bible, you see
And then reading the Bible, obviously, but that's kind of when I was like convinced 100%. Okay. There's no doubt after that.
So I should clarify a little bit. It wasn't just my own reading of the Bible. I have two brothers that are just 2 years older than me. And so all three of us were about at the same time finding Christ. And so we were all reading and we were all becoming theologians. And, that would cause for some really heated debate. And
I call that a good time.
That's a Saturday afternoon.
But you get out of hand sometimes.
And I don't want to say like I did all of this on my own either. I was around people that were pretty actively involved in a Baptist church and all that stuff. So, there was a lot of that. Was also a lot of the Bible stuff was hammered out through that, because I don't understand it near as well as probably everybody else in here. So still had a lot of learning.
I don't know.
I would have probably lost that theologian earlier tonight. So.
Stump the Theologian, yeah.
Yeah, theologian.
So I know that there is, I know at least in some factions, there is a different view on what we call eternal security, the idea of being able to lose your salvation. What was your experience in the Amish communities you're with of the belief on being able to lose your salvation or something, how that works? And then what is your current belief on that then? Or is there a difference?
I mean, you could lose your salvation in the Amish as simple as owning a cell phone, like going in that direction. But
any sort of rebellion against the elders, is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay.
The rules or whatever, the rules of the church, 100%. That would.
What was that fancy word for order? What was that?
Ordnan.
Ordnan.
Yeah.
It's like all the orders of every single part of life, basically all the rules, how you're supposed to do things, yada yada. Okay.
The ordinal.
Yeah, cool vocabulary word there. I still can't hardly. I hear it, I recognize it, and I can't hardly say it.
I think the word "and." I hear you guys putting the "n" in the end, but I think that it's "ung" in the end, like
like a. Is it none or none?
Ordnung. Okay.
But yeah, probably one of the best examples is always if somebody left the Amish and they would die, it was guaranteed that person was going to hell to the Amish. And they wouldn't guarantee heaven. They just guaranteed hell.
And growing up,
oh goodness,
that's a fun religion.
Yikes!
Growing up, there were always these stories. Our mom would for sure tell us anyway that they'd be these kind of folklore stories of this person that left the Amish and he had like bad things happen to him, like where like an angel from God revealed how bad hell is to him, and bam, he went back to the Amish. And so they would tell us these stories. I'm trying to think, do you remember any stories?
So I can give so one of the people in the community where I lived at had left. There was a bunch of them left, but one of them that had left, one of their friends got in a car accident, got hurt pretty bad.
Mm.
And he might even been in a different community. But the Amish, they found out about it. It's like, I don't remember if he went back Amish or not, but the first thing the Amish did is they said that God did this to show them that they shouldn't be Amish. And that was always the claim. Well, I think it was 2 months later, the kid, his dad kept telling him this. 2 months later, an Amish person got in a buggy accident, and he went back and told him that same thing, that God did this to show them they should leave. And it kind of ended that argument. But it was always, they would always find a story. There was an old Vietnam story that they always talked about. These 2 guys left the Amish, and then they were forced to go to the battle in Vietnam. And I don't know the whole story, but it was a scare tactic. If you brainwash somebody, the best way to keep them in order is use scare tactics. So it would be a scare tactic. If you leave the Amish, there might be a draft, and now you got to go kill people. And if you kill somebody, there's no redemption for that. That was 100%
for sure.
That was like blasphemy. There, you can't come back.
Just for an example, I grew up probably 5 states away from where he grew up, and I'm very familiar with that Vietnam story that was just brought up.
That story was from, I think, Ohio. We lived in Minnesota.
The old Ohioans. Yeah. That's where I lived before Iowa, was Ohio. And I love going down the Amish country. I still will go there once in a while. I go visit some family out there. And the town that comes to mind right away is like Millersburg. It's like down there, but it's like there's a whole bunch of areas I go down. It's like Keim lumber, and there's Heine's cheese, which I just love saying that anyways. But great people, great folks,
beautiful countryside.
And you get you great service, great products. Can't say enough good from the experience of visiting and being a consumer.
You go down to, I think it's Ashland. There's a ex-Amish down there that runs like I don't know, it'd be a halfway house or something, in a ministry and everything. He sets up this, can't think of the name now, but he basically has apartments and a grocery store. And then, because it's very hard for Amish women to leave versus men, we can just take $20 and find a place and start doing construction. Almost all of us know how to swing a hammer
and do really well. Yes,
it's probably gone down in quality a little bit. But where for women it's very hard, and I think they help boys too, but it's more a woman thing, because he'll give them a job at the grocery store and give them apartments to stay in.
Okay, cool.
Help them get on their feet.
That's for people who are leaving the Amish.
Yeah, like Amish people that leave. So, because I can't think of the name, else I would say it, and then they can, the ex-Amish or the Amish kids that are going to be watching this can go contact him.
Well, I'll tell you what, we should wrap this up because of time. But for the listeners, we are going to continue the conversation, and that'll be the next episode. So make sure you check that out too. So we'll keep it up here in a moment, but we'll cut it off here, so it's a nice little even split. I think
we will be back with part 2 in next month for you guys. For us, a few minutes, and we are about to sign off. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with all your friends, and that's probably about it. Check us out. And and send us your questions at podcast@thinklikeChrist.org so we can stump the theologian. I'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.